The African American Leadership Awards presents Michigan African American Political Leadership: The Trials, Tribulations, and Triumphs. The state of Michigan has a rich African American heritage within political leadership. Cities include Detroit, Flint, Benton Harbor, and others are represented by these African American political leaders. While serving the interests of not just African Americans, but all citizens alike, these political leaders have and are continuing to make their mark on the state of Michigan. Over the years, our African American political leaders have had to overcome a wide array of circumstances and obstacles. And just like the leaders of the past, our current African American political leaders are faced with their own challenges and difficult issues.
Leave the toys, hit 8 Mile Road. And I don't give a damn if they're black or white, if they wear super fly suits or blue uniforms with silver badges. Hit the road.
So all the headlines in Michigan today describe you and the governor as at odds or split over replacing Flint's pipes. But I know you both say your goal is to get the pipes replaced. How would you characterize your difference with the governor here?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that we need to continue putting these studies in place. You just said today, before the commercial, that we're still testing high for lead. We know we need to get started. It will be 2 years in April, so we've been waiting. This has been a long time coming, and we've identified those homes, just like you talked about, where we have the high lead levels, where we have pregnant women, where we have kids under the age of 6. And we need to get started removing the pipes for those homes immediately. We cannot continue to wait.
The following African American political leaders have made a significant impact in the plight of their fellow Americans, no matter their ethnicity.
For his own family, had a lot of friends that wanted him to speak up for them, and even with 1968 with the open housing, open occupancy. First time in this country that it passed by referendum. And Flint never really, as far as I'm concerned, got the recognition that it should have. I mean, that was a major accomplishment because he said he would resign rather than live a lie. He was respected and loved by blacks and whites. I even run into older people talk about, I wish we had Floyd McCree here. We wouldn't have all these problems like we have now or something like that. He knew how to work with people, and he did. I mean, so, up until he died, he still remained a positive influence in his community.
The African American Leadership Awards pays homage to some of our leaders that have passed. Daisy Elliott.
State and with the Secretary of State, she was elected as a delegate to the 1961-62 Constitutional Convention. While serving as a delegate, Daisy Elliott championed the establishment of the Civil Rights Commission and an appellate court in the state constitution. And whereas during her 18 years in the House of Representatives, Daisy Elliott sponsored dozens of bills that became law and was known for her dogged efforts to fight discrimination in the state. Her crowning achievement was co-authorship of the landmark Civil Rights Act, which bears her name, the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act of 1976. It was one of the most sweeping and influential policies of its kind in the entire nation.
General Holyfield.
So fiat, but America wins. because it offers an opportunity for employment, not just here in the state of Michigan or the city of Detroit or anywhere else in the state of Michigan, but across this country. So what we do here in this set of negotiations is very paramount to the future of America. And there's a lot of people that are citizens of this great country that depend on us to do the right thing. And I assure you that's going to happen.
Ron Scott.
25 years in America, then you know that there's been a phenomenon on the scene known as rhythm and blues, and rhythm and blues goes back farther than that. Eventually it goes back 400 years, maybe 1,000 years, depending on whether you look at Africa or America. So there's one person for the last 25 years who has been what you might call a living legend, a person who's done a lot for the business and a person who's done a lot for black culture and for the culture of humanity, and that is James Smiley. Good to have you.
Nice to be here, and hey, I just listened to the opening, and I wonder I really deserve all that, you know?
I would say so.
Very violent, a very, very vicious, and almost a wolf pack attack on an individual who the contention was in fact fleeing from the police. Well, even if he was, that's not the issue. The issue is whether or not excessive force was used.
When you think about Flint, and you think about black lives, black votes, and black leadership, what comes to mind?
Well, first of all, if it was a different zip code or area code, that would have never happened.
That's right.
I mean, I think the fact that they never paid attention to Legionnaires, I mean, all of the things, emergency management, by the way, is the real crux of the matter, because had it been a democratic process and the people in charge, been in charge, it might have been a different outcome. But clearly, if that had been anywhere else, with all the warnings and signs and signals, it would not have happened the way it did. And so I hope that this becomes a way by which we rally, get people registered to vote, and get in the process, because if not, the Michigan legislature will remain Republican. Mm-hmm. They'll turn back the tide of Democratic participation when people vote to get rid of emergency managers. They simply attach an appropriations bill to a bill and change it. So we got to get up, get out, and get them out.
That's right.
Other than that, all this talk on talk radio and protesting and bringing water will make a difference at all.
Greetings, brothers and sisters, on this third annual African American Leadership Awards ceremony. It's good to be back. It's my distinct honor to celebrate with you as we honor black leadership locally and across the state. I can't think of a better way to celebrate Black History Month than to recognize the annual Leadership Awards and the things that we accomplished by them. Because as the first African American Dean of the House of Representatives, I know how important your contributions are. You don't just come out on election day, you're there before election day. You're there for absentee ballots. You're there to help make sure that the ballots get counted correctly. And I encourage all of you to remain vigilant as we continue this long struggle for justice and equality.
Well, when I think about the fact that we're living in an era, the Obama era, that is about to come to an end, and yet we have jarring juxtapositions. On the one hand, Oscar So White. Here it is that the celebrated Hollywood, which produces images of people the world over, the global recognition of our identity, that we can't even get the adequate recognition of our talent in the midst of our culture with the genius we're producing. And yet from Oscar So White, we got Flint, Michigan, where in this particular era, you would think this is a third world country. You would think this is something going on in places millions of miles from here, and yet right in America, we have the spoiling of people's water. We have pipes that are contaminating our water and contaminating the future of our kids. We have to speak to it. What you're doing, Black Lives Matter, Black Leaders Matter, and Black Votes Matter. Let's bring them together so we can change the situation and transform the world. Thank you for the work you're doing. God bless you.
But Black Lives Matter, for all the obvious reasons, but then the more hidden reasons I think are really the most important. If we don't teach our young people the law of these lands and put them in position to not only respect themselves, but to demand respect through particular actions. Your demeanor, how you carry yourself. Black Lives Matter because they're taking it from us, right? I mean, they're gunning us down. But there's something unique about Detroit. There's something unique about Michigan. A cop who beat down a motorist in Inkster was just sentenced to prison. I don't see anywhere else in the nation that that's happening. A woman who needed help in the middle of the night stumbles on a man's door, knocks, and gets her face blown off because he thought something else was happening. He's in prison too. There are things that happen in our community that versus the rest of the country are not happening. That justice that we're seeking is actually coming around a corner in Detroit, Michigan. And so that has always made us unique, that, you know, things don't just happen here the way they happen everywhere else.
And I think that it's amazing how people have responded, sending water and trying to show and demonstrate support, and then putting a little pressure on the governor, which he has to be. You know, I shouldn't be partisan on this, but one of the problems is that we have let the Republicans really dominate now, so we don't have the votes, and that's one of the things that young people have to understand. You know, it's okay to raise all this cane, demonstrate, have the signs, do the walks, but at the end of it, you gotta vote. And then after you vote, you gotta make sure you understand who the people are that are making the decisions. Mm-hmm. And in that process, you can have an influence.
I mean, we have such a rich history. We stood up at a time when we had no power in our country and fought for our civil rights. We came together and we said we will not allow ourselves or our children in this next generation to endure the injustice. And to me, when I look at what's happening now, and as we've gathered here today, it is extremely important that we understand our power of votes. It's interesting when we look at the presidential debates, they're all talking about who gets the black vote. Finally, we've been recognizing so many of us aren't even voting. If we stood up and used our political power to address criminal injustice, environmental injustice, Flint, if we stand up and demand that our children are educated and that no one has the right to come and strip our power away from us, we can make a difference. Our forefathers taught us that when we stand up, nobody can ride our backs. When we stand up, our children are successful. And if I can tell a message, it's not a message of hopelessness. You know, history has shown us that crisis and things that happen that are tragic, it causes us to stop and think, can I change this situation? It makes it unbearable to the point that we need to stand up. And that's what I'm hoping, and that's what I want to happen from all these things that we've seen.
Our today's reality is tomorrow's history. And so when we revisit our history, we need to think about how we're going to overcome this crisis and how people are going to look at us in the future, how our young people are going to say, how can we overcome? And I think, you know, saying that, we need to show them an example of how we can work together as a community, as a nation, and as a people of like thinkers. You know, you don't have to just be African American, but you can appreciate our agenda that we have for equality. The way it is now, you know, we serve under a pledge that says, you know, liberty and justice for all. But if it continues to go this way for urban communities, they're going to have to insert the word allegedly, liberty and justice for all, when they say that pledge. And so we need to make sure we stand together, fight together, and win together, and we can accomplish that through unity.
One of the things that's happening now with this relief effort is we have, you know, the populations that were already marginalized continuing to be marginalized. So the people living in Section 8 housing, the homeless, people HIV positive, the undocumented community, they're still being marginalized and missed with this effort. And that's really what started like Flint Rising, as a way to kind of lift up all voices and to lift up particularly their voices, because the state and their relief effort and the American Red Cross and United, they weren't looking at those populations at all. They were skipping over them. That was what really started this Canvas program, is because those populations weren't being looked at. The state only had materials only in English. We have like native Spanish speakers. We got Arab refugees coming from Syria and Iraq and Yemen who live here, and those materials weren't translated into those languages. So a lot of our stuff has been exposing like the inequities that are happening with the state and the county's response in this crisis too.
If you need me, call me. No matter where you are, no matter how far, just call my name. I'll be there in a hurry. On that you can depend and never worry.